It's the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. Welcome to another episode of the Mike Prince Show. It is our mission to try to bring you some news that you can use. Today is no exception to the rule. You can follow me on Twitter at the Mike Prince Show. The YouTube channel is the Open Mic Broadcast Network. We do have a 24-hour stream available on our website at obnradio.com. And just in case you have one of those smart devices, all you have to do is say, hey, play the latest episode of the Mike Prince Show, and just like that, you will have everything that you need. And with all that being established, let us now jump right into today's episode. Well, before we got wrapped up into the College World Series, we did get the annual release of the 22-23 fiscal year for the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and we're going to break those numbers down on today. We did give you a peek at Prairie View. They had a $14 million budget, at 75% of that being accounted for by student fees. So we'll go into our remaining list of today. We do have a special note. Bethune-Cookman will not be mentioned on this report because they are private institutions, so therefore they are at the freedom and liberty of not having to reveal anything. So we'll have to, for technical purposes, have them be our number 12 on this list of 12. So we'll start off with Mississippi Valley. Mississippi Valley had $4 million in total budgets for that fiscal year, with 59% of that coming by way of student fees. Coming in after Valley, or should we say right above Valley, would be Alcorn State University. Alcorn State University had a total of $6 million, with 52% of that coming from student fees. Right above Alcorn would be University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff reported $8 million for the 22-23 season, with 50% of that coming by way of student fees. Just above Pine Bluff would be the Grambling State Tigers. Grambling State reports $11 million, with 73% of that coming by way of student fees. Just above Grambling State was JSU, the I Love. Jackson State reported $12 million for the fiscal year, with 39% of that coming by way of student fees. Right above Jackson State was FAMU. FAMU reported $13 million, with 59% of that revenue coming from student fees. Before FAMU, you have Texas Southern. Texas Southern reported $13 million, with 62% of their funding coming by way of student fees. Now we're going to be getting into what would be considered the upper echelon of the conference. Alabama A&M reported $14 million, with a whopping 90% coming from student fees. Prairie View, as we mentioned, $14 million, 75% of that revenue coming by way of student fees. Alabama State, $14 million reported for the fiscal year, with 63% of their revenue coming from student fees. And leading the charge was the Southern University Jags. They had a total of $18 million reported for the fiscal year of 22-23, and they had 72% of their assessments coming from student fees. So when you break all these things down, you notice that Jackson State had the lowest amount, and we're going to have to attribute that, of course, to the Deion Sanders factor. They had 39% of their funding came by way of student fees, which, once again, the marketing power of Deion Sanders. So when you look at all these things, and you got to really scratch your head and applaud at the same time how competitive Alcorn has been at the $6 million threshold. They are next to last, right above Mississippi Valley. And then with Pine Bluff at $8 million and 50% of their revenue coming from student assessments. When you look at those numbers and you compare the apples to apples. And this is not a, as they say, a rocket science formula, but just based on the numbers presented to us, Pine Bluff is doing something in the realm of outside funding to help, because they're relying on like 50%. Most of your schools are falling along that 62, 73 percentile. And of course, we can't forget that amazing number of Alabama A&M at 90%. Now, as I focus on Prairie View, and we got the PV 500 challenge going on, asking 500 PV supporters that will join forces with us to commit to a $100 donation to go toward the athletic department and support for the Prairie View Panthers. Now, we're not necessarily allocating all of that toward football, because we know that in all these institutions that I named, football is going to be taken care of. And I'm not saying that we're going to neglect any of them, but when you look at the numbers that are coming in and you gauging where these teams are finishing in the standings, not just in football, basketball, but all sports that they're competing in, who would you say is doing the most with the least? And when you break down these numbers and you're going like, look at this. I was somewhat surprised at the numbers for Jackson State, $12 million. But once again, they had only 39%. They got a lot of bang out of their buck. When you look at Alcorn, competitive on the football field, extremely competitive on the basketball court, $6 million. You got to say they have to be the leading overachievers when you look at this thing. Now, we don't know the numbers, as we mentioned, about Bethune-Cookman because they're a private institution. But when we look at Valley and you see what they have to work with, $4 million, and we know that Valley has, at least under past leadership, put a lot of emphasis on football. But I'm not going to start my baseball kick. I'm not going to even start basketball kick. But it would make you wonder, when you look at these budgets in comparison from top to bottom, what sport would you put the most emphasis on due to what you have available to you to get the most out of your buck? Now, when I call off these schools, I'll tell you the first sport that jumps off the table for me. Not that they have success in one way or the other, but this is the sport that jumps out to me. Southern University, I automatically think football. Alabama State, I think baseball. Prairie View, I think, it's kind of like up in the air, but I have to go with recent success, basketball. Alabama A&M, I'm going to have to say football. Texas Southern, basketball. FAMU, football. JSU, with the 2-year run of Coach Sanders, I'm going to have to say football, but prior, I would have to be a strong, believe it or not, baseball and then women's basketball. Pine Bluff. When I think of Pine Bluff, I really think of the run that they've had more recently of consistency in basketball. Alcorn, right now, we know what they've done on the gridiron, but basketball has to be their bread and butter as far as getting the most bang from your buck. And then Mississippi Valley. When I think of Mississippi Valley, I honestly think about Mississippi Valley and what they could really be doing on the basketball court. Bethune-Cookman, right now, I have to say baseball for Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman has made some great runs on the baseball diamond and their consistency leading over from the MEAC. So those are the things that I assess when I look at these programs and I compare them apples to apples on what they have to play with as far as budgets are concerned. Now, I do want to make a special note about Alabama A&M. I've been harping on that 90%. 90% of that is coming, as we stated, from student fees, but there have been a tremendous amount of renovations done on the campus of Alabama A&M, and a lot of that has to be voted on by student council. They agree that this is what we want to do, so let's get it done. So that could be a contributing factor of such a large toll on that student assessment. These other programs that I'm looking at, you look at what Texas Southern. Texas Southern is in the middle of trying to get some things done as far as football and baseball, softball complexes. I'm truly excited about what they're doing over there. So when the dust has settled, no, these are not eye-dropping budgets that we're talking about. But if you look at other FCS programs, and let us not talk about D2, D3, NAIA programs, these are some budgets that can be envied, I would say, on those on the bottom tier. So if we don't have that big boy money, how do we have the big boy competition on a little brother's budget? It's going to boil down to creative ways of competing, and bottom line, from top to bottom of every team I've called off through our beloved Southwestern Athletic Conference, we are going to have to show up and support our teams. When we did this report last week, we got a lot of buzz and chime, not just from PV Nation, but from across SWAC Nation, and how they were in alignment with the report we were laying out, and how it's not just isolated as a PV problem. It is a SWAC problem. And let me dare to go even further and say a FCS problem, small college problem. We got to be in a position of helping ourselves. A lot of work to be done, and we're going to try to figure out creative ways to keep it going. But this is what we have for today, and it's always something to be working on, always something that we could reach and do just slightly better from day to day. I hope that this kind of gives you an insight of what we have to work with from A to Z throughout the conference, and keeping on as far as striving toward the mark of the high calling. I am going to exit stage left for today. My time is far spent. Thank you guys so much for joining in with us each and every day. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince, reminding you to mark your calendars for September 1st. We're going to have our annual listening partner drive, and we are asking you guys to join and partner with us by becoming a listening partner for a small fee of $60 annual, $5 a month, or 17 cents a day. You can help us continue to move forward. Do visit the website obnradio.com to check out the 24-hour stream, and don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. I've got to go. My time is far spent. So until the next time, you guys be blessed, and we'll see you on the other side.